help. That's why I try to help a little bit. I'm trying to pass things on. Trying to help people.
Hi folks, this is Raybo, and this is going to be kind of a hard video for me to make, and I'm going to try to spend as much time on it as I need to explain it to the folks that are having problems. But this is over Vortex groups. I'm still a big advocate of the loot it, group it, and rule it train of thought with Vortex groups. But as you kind of get to a certain number of mods, even that becomes a little cumbersome. And also when you start getting some advanced mods and some advanced modding of your game going, you have several layers of mods where you need to put them into different, and I call them hemispheres. And what I use is a top, above center of mass, below center of mass, and bottom hemisphere system to kind of define where my groups are. So I have 5 big hemispheres that kind of layered, and then I further define that out further on down. But let's go ahead and take a look at the Vortex groups. I've already opened it. I'm sure if you guys are watching this video, you know where it's at. And there's several problems here with how the Nexus has set up these groups, and they've never really gone back and fulfilled at least my expectations of what they were going to do with this. I don't want to have this sound like a knock it or rant system or video. I'm really trying to take the best from what they've given us and put it in a usable format where users can get something beneficial out of it. But the bottom line here is this line of groups comes from the Nexus. It's the standard master groups that they have, and they're not even groups. You got Creation Club, that's arguably a group. Texture overhauls, fixes, sure. This is a mod. There's a group. Default is what it is. User interface, items, NPCs, scrap everything's a mod. Horizon's a mod. Alternate starts, arguably it's a group. Dynamic patches, we understand what that is. And dead last. That's a very unintuitive setup as far as I'm concerned. And I struggled with, you can't rename these. You can't actually delete them. I have my alternative load order group list tied into it. You don't have to do that. But what I've done, and I'm going to show you guys in a clearer picture here. I've kind of organized it so we can all take a look at it. And let's go ahead and make this bigger. What I've done is just pulled them across the screen here and put the vanilla groups that you can't delete in there. And this is kind of an important thing that I'll show later on in the video. I sequentially went in and typed in and added 100 user-defined groups with no real names other than my hemispheres. And that's just to kind of tell me where I'm at in my load order. And put 100 groups in there. Now, why I did that is I was very dissatisfied, running, 300, 400, 500 plugins and not being able to do drag and drop. And I understand, the kind of why the Vortex team did what they did, but I'm not a big fan of that, and I don't think a lot of other users are either. But it is what it is, and we need to make the best of it. So with that being hopefully the extent of my rant, why I did this group is to kind of enable me to use something of a drag and drop. I'm going to call it drag and slide into my load order. So when we go here to my load order, you can see that I have a load order here. I took out the mod index numbers, and then right next to it is my groups. So just like with this screenshot here, this is why you have to do it sequentially. So you have to go in and put, when you do your user-defined groups, put 1 top, 2 top, 3 top, and I'll show you later where I got dyslexic and made a mistake. But it's going to load your load order in this order, okay? And the last being whatever category or group you put the mod into. Now I want to be clear. There's a big difference between categories. Categories over here on the mods tab are cosmetic. They really, they don't affect unless you set up an overwrite, which still has nothing to do with categories. Categories is just cosmetic. It helps you look at what type of, what category of mod you have installed. The plugins, the groups, it does affect how your load order loads the game. So I left the Fallout ESM as default. It's going to go there anyway. The DLC, Creation Club, and then you can see my user-defined groups. I have partitions in here. They're just blank plugins, and that also helps me while I'm sorting my load order to keep an idea where I'm at in that load order. But anyway, so my load order starts at load order 25, and it's 1 top. All the rest of these are either blank plugins, DLC, Creation Club, those type of things. And it just goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way down to 100. Now, what makes this kind of slick is if you do your load in, or your user-defined groups sequentially, you're going to have a nice, straightforward list to slide mods back and forth. Now, where I made one mistake is you can see 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, and then 56. So I got dyslexic when I was doing my groups, and that's what I mean. You have to do them all at one time and sequentially. So I connected them, and it's right here. So that's the way it's going to do it. But the way it shows what I'm trying to say is the list doesn't represent. This list doesn't represent what you actually put into groups. It does as far as the nodes, but if you break the sequence, it's going to get the list out of sequence versus what you actually have and how the game loads it. So just something to be aware of, that if you later want to do, if you want to come in and put 100 groups in and you want to add 10 more, well, that 10 is going to be at the bottom of the list. Even though you put them in here, you could maybe put 28.1, 28.2, 28.3, and you can put them in here, and that's the way the game's going to load. But in your list, 28 is just going to say 28, 29, and then your other ones are going to be here after you've added them at a later date. I hope that's clear enough. So anyway, that makes it pretty slick to go in, and when you want to set up, like, let's say, Better Settlers. Better Settlers is a good example of one that I always see people rely on loot, and it always gets jacked up. And my Better Settlers is about 50. I think it's 50. Let's see, Better Settlers. So Better Settlers, Clean Face, these are the add-ons, the CCP pack, and then I have a couple more loose ones, and then Mortal pack. So that's the way the author recommends you load them. But when you look at my groups here, there's no rules. Now, the rules here, this is all metadata that comes from loot. So it shows as if there's a rule here. I only have one rule for about 400 mods. And that's Workshop Framework needs to load after HUD Framework. That's it. That helps when you get sorting errors, as if so the only sorting errors I'm going to get is if I move a mod from one group to another group and it breaks the metadata that was already hard input by the loot team. So one rule. So that tells me that I don't need to select any disconnects, anything like that. And I'll show you guys a problem here when you do that. Okay, I needed to stop myself and come back in and add something because I was going to skip over something really important. So let's talk about sorting errors real quick. So I'm going to go here to Asar Ponytails, or Asar, however you pronounce his name. And you see it's pretty high up in my load order. I'm going to really screw this up. And I know that Better Settlers has some loot metadata that says that this has to load before Better Settlers. And I'm going to go ahead and move it. Let's move it to dead last, or dead last. Okay. And let's go ahead and see what happens when I sort my load order. It's hopefully going to do what I expect it to do, and it's pretty significant, the problem here that this is going to cause for some users, because when you start doing again some of the more complicated overwrites that may have their plugs not sorted because of cyclic rules. All right, exactly what I expected, and this is also why I don't have any rules. Loot it, group it, and then rule it. The fewer rules you have, the safer you're going to be, because I think this is what happens with some users as they build on their load order. They get all these rules set up because, Gopher was saying, hey, don't change the groups. And I love Gopher to death, so don't. He did some great videos for this that I even used as tutorials. But what happens is if you loot it and then rule it and then try to group it, you're going to run into more problems like this. So let's take a look at what's going on here, and let's go more. All right, if you start hitting remove custom groups, it's going to mess up the scope mod. It's going to do all kinds of stuff. All right, remove customs group. All right, and some of it's reset customs group between, and I believe this is the ones that really get you in trouble. And if I hit, selected those and hit apply, what's going to happen is, unbeknownst to most users, if you start clicking these, which I recommend you never do, you never ever should select remove those custom groups, because what's going to happen is, behind the scenes, it's going to disconnect these groups, and you're going to see them. Your whole load order will get broken. Let's say that was it's going to automatically disconnect, let's say 5 of these, and it's going to put loose groups up here. So you're going to have some loose groups hanging up here because you can't get rid of this stuff. You're going to see this start intervening in your load order, and you're going to see these random nodes just splattered all across your load order, and you're going to look at your load order and it's just a mess. That's part of the reason why I'm doing this video. Is this here is horribly confusing to, I think, some users, and why people don't use groups. And that's because you're hitting either your own rules, your own groups, or your metadata. You've done something to break one of those setups. Now, with the rules, you're adding mods, you're removing mods, you're going between different game saves and profiles, you're starting new games, and those rules are still, even if you don't have the mod, the rules are going to stay in there. So all these rules start piling up in Vortex, and all of a sudden now you go to clean it out, and you have all kinds of rules, and you don't know whether a lot of users may not know whether they should get rid of them, whatever, they start deleting them, which I think is a good thing. That's my point, is that you should loot it, group it, rule it. Rules are for the just fine-tuning and exceptions. They should be the first thing you delete. You should not be deleting groups if you set them up correctly. I hope that helps a little bit for folks to understand. So let's go back here and close this. And what I mean by manually fix this, I think I had it at 14. So let's go ahead and move it back to 14. And I think if you saw me, how I manipulate these groups, you would kind of understand why. So I moved it back to where it was. So now the ponytail mod will be back above Better Settlers. And even myself I have no idea why the ponytail mod would want me to disconnect groups with anything to do with scopes. I mean, that's just crazy, and I would have to go through and look at the metadata for each one. There's no rules. It's just some of the stuff, I'm not going to pretend I understand, but let's go scopes. So see through scopes. So there's something going on because there is no metadata for any of those scope mods. So why Vortex throws up an error, I don't know. Maybe there's another mod that says, I have metadata for scopes, and then the ponytail mod conflicts with that. I don't know, but the bottom line is what I'm trying to emphasize here is if you use your groups right, you can with relative confidence know that you never need to touch that sorting issue. You just need to go in and manually fix what you've done. So just making it a little less confusing. I hope that helps. We'll see. So anyway, it makes it very easy for when I'm setting up my load order to just put them in individual groups: 41, 40, 40, 41, 42, 42, 42, 43, 44, 44, 44, 45. So I can separate out easily ones that need to overwrite other mods, but basically kind of get a drag and drop system or a drag and slide system that I can make sure that it's maintained, the load order is maintained when I sort them. The other thing I like about this is that it's very, very visible, that you can see what's going on here with your load order. When you manage groups, you can click here and see the rules you've set up, but they're just contained in this list, and it can get very cumbersome. And if you have a lot of rules, which a lot of users end up doing, and not on Gopher, but like when he was doing his videos, he said, here's how you make a rule. And I think that's great for users with very small load orders, less than 100. But once you start getting over that number, those rules kind of hinder you once you start putting stuff into groups, because then you start breaking your own rules and getting confused, and the metadata comes into play. I really believe that you should loot it, group it, and then do any rules that you need to further define your load order. And just the way Vortex is set up, it kind of forces users into, hey, I have a small load order, I don't understand groups, it looks like a rat's nest. And so they loot it, rule it, and then they try to add groups later as their load order gets bigger, and they run into all kinds of problems and confusion. So the big thing is to set it up right from the get-go. And if you're starting a new game, just go ahead, go in there, and just create your own, and you can name it differently, you can number it differently. I like this because the names, as your mods change and your load order change, are irrelevant. I don't need names to say load this mod here. I just want a sequential way that I can put them into the group I want so it overwrites the previous group. And one of the ways I make sure I do that right is I have this set up on my computer, and I've done another video on how to do this. But you can go in and get your mod load order. Let's see. Right, I have a shortcut right to it in my, here's the path, PC, Windows, users, Daisy, app data, local, Fallout 4. And you can go right in there and pull out your load order, just cut and paste it. And I take it into Excel. And what I do is I drop it into Excel and figure out how I'm going to put the top above center of mass and you know, basically what type of mod it is, and then go ahead and put the group in there that I want it to go into. So that's how I kind of predetermined beforehand. I took an active game that was running very well, that had all my base mods, and I basically organized those groups so I knew that certain mods would go into certain groups. I think I have a more current version of this. Right here. Yeah, this is the current one that I'm working off of for this game. So basically you just cut and paste that load order in here, and then I just predefine my groups and say, okay, these need to be in a group in this order. Sim Settlements mods need to be in a certain location. Not Sim Settlements is like the easiest ones to do because they don't really depend on, they don't have any base game override, so you can just put them, I put them fairly high up. My environmental mods, games changes. So if you use like a mod load order guide that has these groups defined, you can copy those names and use them. That's fine. But what's essential is I'm putting, let's say here's all my utility mods, that goes into number 65. And so each one of these have a number. So it makes it pretty easy for me just to upload a mod. Okay, I know what general area it is. And as I need to refine it, I put enough numbers in there, and you'll see that I put spares in here where I think I might add or change the mods quite a bit at some future time. So that's my take on how to overcome the Vortex issue of not being able to do drag and drop. It's not, it's my alternative given what we have to use. As mod load orders grow, I think you're going to see in about any guide, if you're going to heavily mod Fallout 4, I know at least the Byrant Beck guide, they only recommend the old Nexus Mod Manager or the Mod Organizer 2. For those of you that have committed to using Vortex and have spent the time to learn it and don't want to learn another mod organizer, this video is for you. Hope it helps, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you. Goodbye.